Have you ever stopped to consider the stories we tell ourselves about our life? As humans, we're programmed to operate according to stories. We tell them, we create them, and we hear them. And it's been that way since the dawn of time. Even the earliest humans out there wrote stories on the cave walls. Stories are how we communicate with each other, and they're how we make sense of the world around us. Stories also get bigger and more powerful the more that they're told. The more we hear them, the more we repeat them, the more power and influence they have over us. And these stories can either be a great source of strength or a stumbling block to us, depending on how we interpret them, and especially when they're about ourselves. But here's the kicker. Not all stories are always accurate. In truth, stories are bits of information that we string together to make them make sense. They explain who we are, what we believe, and why we do what we do. And as humans, our brains are wired to make sense of the world around us by connecting those dots and stringing that information together to form what we believe are facts. This is where life gets interesting. Have you ever noticed that two people who witness and experience the very same thing can process it completely differently and tell completely different stories about it? Imagine two people standing in front of a window, side by side, both have this same information in front of them. But what do each of them see? Both are going to come out with different versions of the facts based on what they saw and what they filtered out. One might see the sunshine and blue sky and clouds and trees, and another person might see the houses or the cars on the street, or maybe even the neighbor's dog. But they're both relevant. They were both part of that same experience. The same is true with life. Facts aren't necessarily truth. They're actually subjective interpretations to the informations that we received. They're also descriptions of what happened that are influenced by our own past experiences and our own emotional imprints from significant events that happened to us that we might not even realize are even still there or even have any impact on us. This is where it becomes very important to understand stories when we apply them to ourselves and to the world around us, because stories shape our lives. We've all been told stories from a very young age. We've been told about our family, our culture, our values. We used to even read books to our daughter before she was born. Some of those stories that we tell and hear are positive and inspiring. Some of them are negative and can create serious damage. And some are assumed to be neutral, but may actually still leave imprints that we may or may not recognize are there for a long time. It's the combination of these stories, though, that form the lens that we see through when we look at the world. And we often fall back on these stories as we figure out how to navigate our way through life, especially when there are significant changes in our life, such as becoming an empty nester, losing a loved one, or facing health challenges. Our life stories are often shaped by very old programming too. They're actually very deep-seated belief patterns that are formed in our very, very earliest years of life. And they operate below the surface of consciousness and awareness. But they're also based on information that may or may not have actually been strung together correctly, especially if it imprinted when we were very, very young children. But even as adults, those imprinted beliefs still affect us. Take, for example, if your internal stories include self-doubt or fear, they can color every decision you make in life. And you might find yourself stuck in a loop of negative thinking or frequently replaying mistakes or anticipating failures. Those things didn't just come in the moment. Those things are often reactions to things that happened to us a very, very, very long time ago, maybe very early in childhood, but they become self-fulfilling prophecy to us as adults. On the other hand, positive and empowering stories can propel us forward. When we shift our perspectives and start telling ourselves a new story, one that's based on our strengths and resilience and capacity for growth, it changes our entire being and how we view the world around us. The cool thing is that we have the power to rewrite our narratives anytime we want. Now, when I say that, I have to put a clarification out there. There's a very popular notion out there that we can actually rewrite our own life stories and become whoever we want to be. Now, there is truth to that to some extent. We cannot, however, change what has happened to us or what experience we've had or how we reacted to those things in the past. This is especially true in cases of trauma. And it is super important that we are real about that stuff and that we own it. We can't downplay it, we can't change the details, and nor should we accept any blame for the choices and behavior of others. Because in reality, they convinced us to do that, to try and silence us so they didn't have to be accountable for their own behavior. The only thing we can change is how we think about the story, how we tell the story, and how we interpret the information we have available. A significant story shift for one person might be having the courage to be real about things that happened, and then shifting blame for it off yourself and back to where it belongs. Which I'll give you a little hint. In most cases, it's either a random act or an accident or the result of another person's choices. On the other hand, someone else's new narrative might be, that bad thing happened, it sucked, it left a mark, and it was hard, but I'm now learning and growing and becoming stronger because I'm learning to overcome. The cool thing about rewriting our narratives is that we really do get to choose a new trajectory for our life. We get to choose a new vision for ourselves, new beliefs, and we get to create new hopes and dreams. A big part of how we do that is by fact-checking our stories. I've got a few tips that can help you fact-check your stories and create new empowering narratives for yourself. The first is you got to identify the story. Before we can change anything, we've got to know what it is. And we've got to be real about the story that we're telling ourselves. When you find yourself feeling stuck or anxious or doubtful, ask yourself why. What thoughts are running through your mind? What is the story you're telling yourself about this situation? Is it too hard? Is it impossible? Is it not going to work? But then go a little bit deeper and ask, when have I ever felt this way before? And you might find writing all that stuff down helps you clarify it. The next thing you can do is to question the story that's going on in your head. Once you identify that story, ask yourself whether it's really even true. Is this story based on actual facts, or is it a narrative that I've created about those things that happened to keep myself safe and to make sure I don't get hurt again, or to make sure I'm protecting myself or someone else? Or is it even something that someone else somewhere along the way has told you about yourself? Another thing to look at is, are there other ways to interpret the situation? For example, instead of telling yourself that you're bad at handling change, what if you said, hey, change is kind of hard. I've never done this before. This is a little freaky and a little scary, but I've handled change before, and these were the times when I handled change successfully. Number 3 is to look for evidence that supports the conclusions that you've come to. You want to gather evidence that either supports or challenges the new story. For example, if your story is that you're not good enough or it's too scary, think of times when you succeeded, when you received praise, when people were proud of you, or that you overcame a big challenge, and then stop and celebrate those things. This evidence can help you see that the stories that are going on in your head or that you're telling yourself might not be the whole truth. Number 4 is to then rewrite the narrative of that story. Once the mess is entangled, it's time to create that new narrative. And it's one that reflects your strengths, your resilience, and potential. Instead of just focusing on the past failures and doubts or fears, shift your narrative to one of hope, possibility, or simply being okay with whatever is. But you want to find the narratives that empower you. Let go of the old stuff that doesn't serve you and embrace the stuff that makes you feel good, that empowers you, and helps you to move forward. This is how we create new narratives for our life. It's how we create new versions of ourselves. It's how we navigate big life changes. It's also how we reconnect with ourselves, and even how we start new chapters of our life with a sense of freedom and possibility. So regardless of what's going on, the stories that you tell yourself can either be your greatest ally or they can be your greatest obstacle. And you get to choose whichever one it's going to be. I firmly believe that your best chapters are not behind you. They are still ahead of you. And that you have the power to decide how those chapters ahead of you play out. If you like what you heard today, go ahead and give my channel a like, subscribe to it so you can get new content, and leave a comment. Let's talk about what you heard today. Also, check out the links below. There are lots of resources for how you can reconnect with yourself, gain confidence, and rediscover your new life. And while you're at it, you might as well share this message with a friend who can use it too. That's all for now. I will talk to you later. Bye.